Welcome to my channel. I can't believe I've got over 227 subscribers now. That just blows my mind. I'm absolutely amazed. And I can't thank you enough for subscribing to my channel. Thank you for liking my videos. Thank you for commenting on them. And especially thank you for sharing them, since I don't do any self-promotion. I'm totally dependent upon you sharing my videos with other people. And you've obviously been doing that because I'm getting more subscribers every day. It's amazing to me. I just don't understand it, but I'm very thankful for it. And as long as people are subscribing to my channel and watching my videos, I will try to continue to make videos that will be ones that people want to watch. Tonight, I want to talk about genealogy. If you have ever had an interest in your family history, in knowing about your ancestors, but you don't know very much, then you might be interested in doing some genealogy. And you might be surprised to find that it's really not that difficult to do nowadays. There are lots of free resources that you can use on the internet to do genealogical research. And there's lots of interesting resources that you can use that you might not even know about. So I just want to talk about a few of those briefly with you and show you what they are. The first one is a site called FamilySearch.org. FamilySearch.org, one word. It's owned by the same people that own Ancestry, but it's free. And it has many of the same resources, though not all, that Ancestry does. It's particularly weak when it comes to finding things like divorce records and sometimes marriage records and birth records. But it has a wealth of information that's very useful, and it's easy to get started. All you have to do is go to search and put in family tree and then type in the name of one of your ancestors. Let's say that, for example, that man's name is Frederick Smith, okay? And let's say that you don't know a lot about Frederick Smith, but you know that he was probably born sometime around 1860. So you click on birth, and you know that he was born in Massachusetts, okay? So you put in Massachusetts. You can autofill from below. And then for birth year, put in 1860. And the system will automatically assume a 4-year span. So from 1858 to 1862. And then you just click on search. And lo and behold, we find Frederick Smith in Massachusetts. More than one. And you can look at those and see, do they fit your ancestor? Are they people that you've heard of? This particular Frederick Smith was married to a Carrie Howlett. Okay? And you can click on his name, click on person, and see his record. And you notice that you have several screens, but the ones that are of most interest to you probably are details and sources. So under details, you have his birth and death and the locations, if they're known. In this case, we just know that he's deceased, obviously, because he was born in 1860. We don't know when he died, we don't know where he died, and we don't know where he was buried. But we have some research help already showing up over here. This is Vital and Town Records for Massachusetts. And if we click on this, it will bring up a record, and we can look at this record by clicking on View Record. And when we get there, what we find is Frederick William Smith. Now, one thing I'll recommend to you here is always, always, always look at the actual document, because they're using AI to translate these handwritten documents into computer screen information for you, and they're not always correct. So always look at the document itself to make sure that it says what they claim it says in this main body of the page. But you see here it says he's a male. His father's name was Frederick W. Smith. His mother's name was Carrie Howlett. Okay. And this particular event, whatever this is, it is a town clerk vital record, is located in North Brookfield, Worcester, Massachusetts, and the event date is 15 September 1887. And the event type is birth. So this is a child of the Frederick Smith that we looked up. And his name is Frederick William Smith. His father's name may be Frederick William Smith, but we don't know that yet. But you notice we also have other records here. We have a 1920 census. We have a New Hampshire death record. And we have a Massachusetts state vital record. So there are lots of records that you'll be able to look at in Family Search, and you can probably fill out at least a skeleton of the person that you're looking for. If you don't find anybody when you go to search and go to Family Tree, just go to search records and follow the same procedure. Put in the name, first name, last name, and then click on more options. Put in the birth date if you know it, or the birth period if you know a period like 1860 or 1870 or 1910 or whatever it happens to be. And then the location if you happen to know that. State is fine. If you know the city, that's fine too. And it will show you all the records that it knows about that person. So let's put in Walter Jones, okay? And we're going to say that Walter Jones was born in 1890, 90, in North Carolina. Okay. So we click on that, search. And here are some records for Walter Joneses that were born around 1890 in North Carolina. Here's a Walter Levi Jones who was born in Upward in Henderson County and married to Bessie Ellen Jones. And this is a vital record. It's a birth record. Now, one thing you need to understand about records, well, there's several things actually. First of all, never take a official record as gospel. They're not. Death certificates were often filled out by a clerk based on information given to them by a reporting party who may or may not know anything about that person. So you'll find death certificates where the father and mother are not known because the reporting party didn't know who they were. You'll find names misspelled. You'll find dates that are wrong. You'll find all kinds of errors in official records. So be cautious with them. Don't just take them at face value and assume that they're correct. Do your research. Look at all the records you can find to get the best possible dates. This even goes for tombstones, by the way. Tombstones sometimes have the wrong dates on them. Not very often will you find a tombstone with the wrong death date, but you'll often find tombstones with the wrong birth date. Okay? So Family Search is free. All you have to do is register, create an account, and then you can start researching. Now, the next page I want to show you is called WikiTree. WikiTree is an attempt to create one worldwide tree. And if you have ancestors that you know the names of and the dates they were born, you can put that information in here and search for them, and you may find them. Now, all of these records on WikiTree are entered by researchers like me, professional genealogists, amateur genealogists, and total amateurs who know nothing and don't even know how to research. So again, take the records, don't take the records at face value. Look at them carefully and research them. So here's a Walter Jones. That's an interesting name. Walter Jones was born in 1865 We don't know where, and we don't know when he died, but we know he is the father of Walter Alonzo Jones. And we do know where he died. He died in 1927 in Gum Neck, Tyrrell, North Carolina. So this is another resource that's also free. You can create an account and you can start entering profiles here if you want, or you can just use it for research. It's absolutely free. Here's another excellent research. Find a grave. Let's look on Find a Grave, see if we can find someone. Let's look for Thomas Smith, who was born in 1822. All right? We don't know where, and we don't know when he died. That's all we know is his name and his birth year. So we click on Search, and lo and behold, we have a T.W. Smith and a T.B. Smith. May or may not be your ancestor, but you can probably find at least some of your ancestors here. The people that are on Find a Grave, the people that run Find a Grave, are the same people that run Family Search and Ancestry, the Mormons. And they are excellent genealogists, and they do an excellent job of researching and providing records to other people. You can subscribe to Ancestry if you want, but it's not inexpensive. It is not at all inexpensive, and I would recommend, if you're just starting out, that you start out with Family Search, WikiTree, and Find a Grave. And with that, you can at least start to create your family tree on Family Search and get some idea of what you're looking at. The reason I got into this was because 3 years ago in October, my wife and I were sitting in the living room, and she looked at me and she said, I don't know anything about my mother's family. And I said, well, you've got an Ancestry account. Why don't you look it up? She said, oh, that's too much trouble. I said, well, give me your password. I'll look it up for you. And that got me started. And I've been doing research in genealogy ever since, creating profiles on WikiTree. And if you... let's see, I'll have to log in here. Well, actually, I'm already logged in. If you look at my contributions, whoops, what happened there? No, I'm logged in. If you look at my contributions on Family Search, you'll see I've got quite a bit there. And if you look at the stats, I have made 65,191 contributions to Family Search. Now, a contribution is something as simple as adding a single source to a profile. So I've done quite a bit of work there. The first year I did 32,000, and the following year I did only 15,000, and this year I've done 16,000 so far. I'll probably maybe get to 17 or 18 by the end of the year. I do all of my primary research on FamilySearch.org. And then once I am certain that I have correct information and I know what I'm talking about, I add those profiles to WikiTree. Now, again, free, absolutely free, FamilySearch.org, WikiTree.com, and findagrave.com. Those are your three resources. You can get a lot of information about your family just from those three. Also, if you have anyone in your family that has a family Bible that's been handed down, if you don't know, ask. Call your aunts and uncles, cousins, nephews, whatever, and ask them, do you know of any family Bibles in the family that anyone has? You'd be amazed what you can find in a family Bible. I'm not going to do it tonight, but one example would be my wife's family on her father's side are Browns. And I found a Brown family Bible that goes back to the early 1700s and shows all of the husbands and wives and children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and so forth, with birth dates, death dates, weddings, everything. Family Bibles are a rich, rich source of genealogical information. So if you can find one of those in your family, that's the first thing I'd look for, because that would be fantastic. Now, here's another free resource that you can use. It's our own Library of Congress. They have an archive of newspapers. The interface is a bit kludgy. It's a bit difficult to search, and then once you get the response to your search, bringing up the article and being able to read it can be interesting as well. But it's absolutely free. So you can search newspaper records as well. And one of the things that I've learned in doing genealogy is that not everybody has an obituary in the newspaper. Not everybody has a birth announcement in the newspaper. Not everybody has any mention at all in the newspaper. But some people have lots and lots and lots of mentions. I found my wife's great-great-grandfather had probably 40 or 50 different newspaper articles about him. And so I got a rich source of information from newspapers. That's another source that's also free. Now, if you want to spend money, then I would recommend you get newspapers.com. Newspapers.com is by far the most comprehensive newspaper archive on the internet. I don't remember what it costs. I really don't. So I'm not going to try to speculate. You can go to the website and look it up. But you do have to have an account to search and find articles on newspapers.com. You do not have to have an account to read articles on newspaper.com if someone gives you the link. So, for example, I can go to the clippings that I've made of newspaper articles and share them with you, and you can view them without having an account. But in order to search for newspapers, information in newspapers, obituaries, mentions of people that you're looking for, you would have to have a paid account. And then here's another one. It's called Fold 3. Fold 3 is military records. And I would classify it as somewhat complete for the Civil War, a lot less complete for other parts like World War I, World War II, and so forth. But you may find your ancestors' records here. And that reminds me of one other thing I need to tell you. Do not assume your ancestor's name was spelled a certain way. For example, Smith you would think would be S-M-I-T-H, but it could also be S-M-Y-T-H or S-M-Y-T-H-E. And there are lots and lots of variations for names. Remember, back in the early days of America and of other countries, people were not educated. They didn't know how to read or write. And so even the clerks who were trained to write and read were many times spelling names phonetically or spelling them the way they'd seen them spelled. And if you think about it, if you have, say, for example, an English-speaking clerk in the state of Virginia writing down a record that's being given to them by a Scotsman, the difference in language, in accent, and the emphasis of vowels in words can lead to some very interesting results in terms of the names in the records and what the records say. There are also deeds that are available online in some places. Some states want to charge you for them, other states don't. And you need to also remember that census records before 1850 did not include the names of anyone except for the head of household. So none of the children are named, none of the spouses are named. And those census records can be very interesting to look at because they just put a mark in a column for the age span of people. So it might be 25 to 49. And you have to kind of sort through those to figure it out because, for example, when I was looking in North Carolina for some of my wife's ancestors whose last name was Burns, I found 3 Thomas Burns in the same census record. Well, which one is my wife's Thomas Burns? And you have to sort through those and figure them out from the ages of the people and where they were living. After 1850, they recorded the name of the entire family, the husband, the wife, and all the children, any servants or slaves that were, servants that were in the household were named. In 1850 and 1860, they had what were called slave schedules, but they never put the names of the slaves. So if you're researching African American ancestry, that gets tough when you get back past 1870 because there's no names. You have to go to wills of the owners to find the names of the slaves because many times in the will, the owner would bequeath the slaves by name to his children or to friends or whatever. And also, in addition to the will, you would have estate inventory records that would list the slaves by name and their value. And you sometimes have estate settlement records as well. So if you get all 3 of those, you may be able to actually find the names of your ancestors that were enslaved before 1865. But that's a tough job. It's a really tough job. If you ever watch Dr. Henry Louis Gates on Roots on PBS, you know that finding records for African Americans prior to 1870 it's tough work. You got to be patient, you got to be diligent, you got to work hard at it to find them. But it can be done. I have done some. I don't particularly care for them because they're so difficult, but I have done some. I researched one entire family of slaves that were freed in 1807 and found quite a bit of information about them because they were free blacks, although free is a relative term. They had all sorts of restrictions placed upon them. It was a horrible thing that was done back then. But anyway, the information is there. It's just you got to dig it out. You got to search and find it. Use Google, use DuckDuckGo, use whatever search engine you use and search for them that way. And you may run across books that'll be in archive.org that will mention your ancestors by name. You can find genealogy books on archive.org. I've found some of those for my wife's family. If your family came from overseas, like mine did, my mother's family came from Sweden, my father's family came from Germany, you can find records in both of those countries. They're in the native language, so you have to get them translated, but Google Translate does a halfway decent job of translating them. And if you get on a place like wikitree.com, there are people that live in those countries who will translate records for you. And it gets much, much more interesting the older you go, because those records are handwritten, which means the handwriting can be anything from beautiful to absolutely atrocious. It can be really, really difficult to decipher words or even letters. But the information is available and it's on the web, and a lot of it is free. There's enough of it free that you can at least get started on your family and figure out who your ancestors are and where they came from. I've managed to trace my wife's family on the Burns side back to, the Burns is her mother's maiden name, back to Scotland, and on the Brown side back to England. And I've traced my family back to Sweden and Germany back into the early 1700s. And I never would have thought I would have been able to do that. But over time, as you get more skills in searching and looking and reading and understanding records, you will get better at figuring out how to get to those records that are more difficult to get to. Also, one other thing, in our modern age, you're probably very familiar with death certificates, marriage licenses, and birth records. Well, they didn't have those back in the 1800s. Most states didn't start publishing official birth records, marriage records, and death records until about 1915 to 1920. So when you get back past 1915 to 1920, you're looking for handwritten records that were kept by various people. A lot of the records in the States for marriages were marriage, what they called banns, B-A-N-N-S, that were available and you can look at those on Family Search and other places and read them or try to read them. Some of them are quite interesting. I came across one record for an ancestor in Germany where the prospective husband had to swear to the bride's family before they married that he would raise their children in the Catholic Church. Otherwise, they never would have gotten married. So, and it's interesting, too, that families go back and forth between Protestant and Catholic and other religions. Lots and lots of interesting stuff you can learn from genealogy. I learned about one man who in 1820 lived in Virginia and became an apprentice to a carriage maker at the age of 12. At the age of 17, he completed his apprenticeship. He packed up his belongings and the $3 that he had on him, and he walked from Virginia to Columbia, Tennessee. That's about 600 miles on foot in the middle of the winter by himself. When he got to Columbia, he got a job working for a carriage maker. He eventually ended up building his own carriage making company and then branched off into agricultural implements and was mayor of the town of Columbia, Missouri, 3 separate times. There's a guy who started out by walking 635 miles in the wintertime to go to a new location to start his life. Can you even imagine doing that? I mean, there's no 7-Elevens, there's no gas stations, there's no hotels, there's no motels. You got to kill your food to eat it. You got to create a fire, or set a fire, or start a fire to stay warm at night so you don't freeze to death. And you got to be worried about the bears and the Indians and all these other things. An amazing story. And it's written up in a newspaper. So, if you're interested in genealogy, I encourage you to get started with these free resources and spend some time just doing some research. See what you can find. If you run into roadblocks or you have difficulties, my email address is in the About on my channel. You can email me and ask me questions. And I will make this promise. If you're really serious about doing genealogy, I mean serious, you really want to get going and figure out your family, send me an email and I will help you get started. That's my promise to you. Okay? So, genealogy can be fascinating. It can be extremely frustrating. Oh, I forgot to mention the census records. Starting in 1850, census records had the names of all the members of the family, the father, the son, the wife, all the children, any servants that worked for them, any boarders that lived with them. And that goes right up to 1950. Congress passed a law that prevents the census from being released until 72 years after it's been issued. So the latest census record you can find is 1850. And also the 1890 census records were lost. I don't know the whole story behind that, but they're gone. They're not even available. And that's really frustrating if you have a family, say, that got married in 1880. By 1900, their first child at least would be 20 years old or older and gone. So you have no records to find to tell you who the children were, unless they were still in the household in 1900. That's a 20-year span, just about a whole generation. But all of this is available for free on the web, either through our government or through these free resources that you can find. And it can be a really fascinating search. I've been doing it for 3 years now. I'll probably do it until the day I die because I enjoy it that much. It's just fun figuring out puzzles and solving questions that come up when you come across somebody who's supposedly married to someone and you go, how and when did these people get together? And you start doing the research and you begin to doubt that they were married, and then you find a record that shows they were. Or vice versa, you find records that show they were not. It's all, if you're the type of person who likes solving puzzles, if you're the type of person who likes uncovering clues, if you have skills in searching using search engines, you might just find yourself falling in love with genealogy like I have. So that's my video for the day. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll like it. Comment on it if you did. If you want help with genealogy, send me an email. I'll do what I can. And as always, I pray that you are living abundantly, that you're in good health, and that you live a long life, and that God blesses you and keeps you safe. I pray that God does the same for everyone that you love, every single loved one. And I pray that you be anxious for nothing, but in all things, through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, you make your requests made known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will keep your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. This is the Vietnam Era Vet out.